Have you ever wondered what would happen if the US dollar suddenly collapsed? I mean, we hear about it all the time. Economic predictions, inflation warnings, the dollar's decline, and it sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie, right? But what if I told you that we might actually be closer to this happening than you think? The US-China trade war is just one piece of the puzzle. Inflation is rising. Gold and silver are becoming more valuable by the day, and countries around the world are looking to ditch the dollar altogether. So, let's dig into why the dollar might be in trouble, and what this means for your money, your investments, and your future. Stick around because you won't want to miss this. The US-China trade war back for round 2. Losing the edge. Let's talk about the US-China trade war. You probably thought it was over, but it's not. In fact, it's heating up. The US slapped tariffs on Chinese goods, and China retaliated by raising their own tariffs and beefing up military spending. It's like the world's largest economic superpowers are locked in a game of who can hurt each other more. Not exactly a fun game for anyone. So, what's the deal? This isn't just about trade, it's about global power dynamics. The trade war is driving nations to reconsider how much they rely on the dollar. The more countries get stuck in this trade war, the more they look for alternatives to using US currency. Some are moving toward the euro, others are trading in their own currencies, and some are even shifting toward cryptocurrencies. If more countries stop using the dollar, guess what happens? The dollar weakens. And as the dollar weakens, inflation could rise, making the price of everyday goods more expensive. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't a short-term problem. It's a slow-moving train wreck. This trade war could stretch for years, creating long-term uncertainty that'll send ripple effects through the global economy. So, is the dollar's dominance really safe? Or are we looking at the beginning of the end? Let's talk about the US dollar itself. For decades, the dollar has been the global reserve currency. It's the go-to currency for global trade, and it's been trusted by investors, governments, and banks around the world. But recently things have been changing. The dollar's dominance is no longer a given, and the reasons behind it are pretty fascinating. One of the main reasons, US policies are getting more unpredictable. Think about it. Politicians and central banks are creating massive amounts of money. In 2020 alone, the Federal Reserve printed nearly $3 trillion to combat the economic effects of the pandemic. That's a huge amount of money flooding into the economy, and it makes you wonder, if there's too much money floating around, how much is? Let's be real. When people see policies like this, they start questioning the value of the dollar. You can only print so much money before inflation starts to erode its value. Look at how the dollar has been performing lately. It's losing ground against the euro, yen, and even emerging market currencies. Investors are noticing this and looking for safer places to stash their cash, like precious metals. Gold and silver. The real safe havens. Now, when we talk about alternatives to the dollar, we can't ignore gold and silver. These precious metals have been around for centuries and have always been seen as a reliable hedge against inflation and economic instability. But recently there's been a serious uptick in demand for both metals. You see, as the dollar weakens, central banks are buying more gold. Why? Because they know that in times of uncertainty, gold holds its value. It doesn't rely on the performance of any particular economy. It's universally recognized. You don't need a PhD in finance to understand why investors are flocking to it. Take India, for example. The country has always had a strong cultural affinity for gold, but recently the demand for gold bars and coins has gone through the roof. And it's not just for jewelry, it's an investment. As for silver, people often overlook it in favor of gold, but it's starting to steal the spotlight. As of last year, silver imports into India surged by 37%. Why? Because silver is cheaper than gold, and its value is starting to rise. It's becoming more and more attractive as a financial asset. Dollarization. The end of the dollar's reign? Dollarization is a term that's been floating around for a while now, and it's a game changer. You see, when we talk about the US dollar being the global reserve currency, what we mean is that it's the most trusted and widely used currency for international trade and foreign reserves. But more and more countries are beginning to question this arrangement. Why? Well, for starters, the US isn't the economic powerhouse it once was. Sure, the US economy is still one of the largest in the world, but other economies, especially China, are catching up quickly. China's economy is growing at a pace that even the US can't match, and their influence over global trade is expanding. In fact, China's yuan has been increasingly used in trade agreements, especially with countries that are looking to move away from dollar dependency. Some countries are even going as far as using their own currency for international trade instead of the dollar. Brazil, for example, has entered into trade agreements with China where they no longer use the dollar as an intermediary currency. This is a huge deal because the dollar has been the bridge currency for decades. If countries like Brazil and China keep pushing the dollar out of global trade, the dollar's dominance could face serious challenges. The thing is, it's not just China or Brazil. More and more nations are diversifying their currency reserves and moving away from the dollar. Russia has been leading this charge by buying up gold and selling off US dollars. And this is happening while other central banks are diversifying their reserves away from the greenback. What's the end game here? It's a slow burn, but ultimately the US dollar could lose its status as the world's reserve currency. The global financial shift. So here's the big question. What happens next? The global financial system is changing and you're going to want to be ready for it. The US dollar is under pressure, gold and silver are gaining momentum, and nations are looking to move away from dollar dominance. The system that has been in place for decades is beginning to shift, and if you're not paying attention, you could miss it. What does this mean for you? Well, it's all about positioning yourself. While everyone's eyes are on gold as a safe haven in times of uncertainty, silver is quietly positioning itself as a key player in the financial markets. Traditionally, gold has been the go-to asset for investors looking to hedge against inflation or financial instability, but silver is starting to gain more attention, especially with its growing industrial demand. Unlike gold, which is primarily used as a store of value, silver plays a critical role in industries like electronics, solar energy, and electric vehicles, making it more than just a precious metal. One of the key factors driving silver's appeal is its price-to-value ratio. Right now, silver is much more affordable than gold, which makes it an accessible option for both new and seasoned investors. The price of silver tends to be more volatile than gold, which can make it riskier, but also opens up the potential for higher short-term gains if the market moves in your favor. As more countries and industries push for green energy, particularly solar power, the demand for silver is expected to rise. Silver is a key component in solar panels, and as the world moves towards renewable energy, its industrial use is likely to increase. Additionally, with global central banks continuing to stockpile gold as a hedge against inflation, there's growing speculation that silver could follow a similar path. As investors look for ways to diversify their portfolios and manage risk, silver's affordability, industrial demand, and potential for price growth make it an intriguing option. Now, if you found this video valuable and you want to diversify your investments beyond traditional stocks and bonds, I have just the thing for you. Even though I believe that investing in a low-cost index fund is the best long-term investment for the average Joe, the benefits of solid physical gold are hard to deny. I think of physical gold as insurance against unpredictable times, and I'm not the only one. In 2023, central banks added over 1,000 tons of gold to their reserves, the second highest annual purchase in American history. And in 2024, central bank got another 290 tons of gold in just the first 3 months of the year. If the biggest banks in the world are buying tons of gold, I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I found a company that allows ordinary Americans to own and securely store physical bars of gold as part of their IRA account. The best part is that they're giving away a free guide to teach you all about investing in solid physical gold. If you want to learn more about how gold can protect your retirement savings, just click the link in the description to receive a completely free gold IRA guide.